Hey everybody, I'm Jackman, aka the Terrible Australian of Supermastery.com, and welcome to my video review of Chappie, which is the new film from Neill Blomkamp, the director behind the Academy Award nominated film District 9, and as well as the hit sci-fi film ELYSIUM. So let's get right into it. Now, I absolutely love District 9. It was one of my favorite sci-fi films of the past couple of years, and it actually made my top 5 best films of 2009 list. And unfortunately, his follow-up film ELYSIUM I did find a bit disappointing. I thought the first 2/3 of that film were really good, but unfortunately the film just sort of fell apart in the third act. But despite my disappointment of that film, I was still very much looking forward to Chappie, which is his third film, and because the whole sort of the idea that the film was of this film I found really interesting, and so I was very very much looking forward to seeing it. Then I read about the pretty much the critical backlash, and I found that made me even more curious about the film, because pretty much critics have been really hating this movie, and I was very curious why that is. Like, what is it about this film that has got a lot of film critics up in arms? So I was even more eager to check it out, and now having seen the film, I do think that their reaction is a little too much, but at the same time I can understand why they're responding the way they are with this film, and I'll tell you why. For me personally, I thought it was a really solid film. I do think it's better than ELYSIUM. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really solid, compelling, and sci-fi film that also had a lot of heart and as well. But at the same time, just like ELYSIUM, it does have a lot of flaws. But before I get into what those flaws are, I'll get into the positives of this film. For me, I think the heart and soul of this film, and for me what made the film work, was, of course, the performance of Sharto Copley in the role of Chappie. Not only does he voice the character, but he also does the motion capture for him. So Chappie is a CGI creation in this film, and you wouldn't think that while watching the film. There are scenes in this where I couldn't tell, honestly, whether he was fully a CGI character or a puppeteer, a puppet, or they might have done a combination of the two in certain scenes, but I thought the look of Chappie in this film was so realistic that I just completely forgot that it was a CGI creation. And I think it also has to do with Copley's performance, because he brings a lot of humanity to the part, and he brings so much to the role that you've pretty much root for this character from beginning to end. You're sort of taken in as soon as he sort of gets created for the first time. He's basically just acts like a child, but during the course of the film, as we go on his journey, he sort of grows, his intelligence gets more and more bigger, and he sort of grows as a character, and he experiences both the good and the bad of the world that he is in. And it's sort of interesting to watch that film watch the events of that are unfolding in this film from his perspective, and I think Copley just did a really good job at conveying that, and also and you just feel for this character. Chappie goes through so much stuff in this film that it just breaks your heart when you see him, especially in the film's sort of more dramatic scenes, or even some of the film's more disturbing elements, because Copley just does it so well that you just don't, like I say, you just don't see him as a CGI character. You just see him as actual, real creation, and it's just great. Copley does a fantastic job in this film, and I think it is without a doubt his best performance since District 9. It's just a perfect performance from him. And some of the supporting casts were pretty solid as well. Hugh Jackman, it was fun to see Hugh Jackman sort of take on a full-on villain role, and you can tell while watching the film that he's just having an absolute blast playing it. Even though, yeah, his character is rather cartoonish and rather one-dimensional, but he's still a rather effective bad guy. Even though at times his character doesn't quite make sense in certain regards, but I thought Hugh did a good job at sort of playing this really kind of over-the-top bad guy. And I do like the fact that the character that he plays is actually an Australian character, even though he's probably like the most stereotypical Australian character I've seen in quite a while. But, I can forgive the film on that. Hence the sort of cartoonish element of the performance. But I thought Hugh did good. Dev Patel also was pretty strong as well in his supporting role. And also Yolandi Visser, who's one half of the South African hip-hop duo Die Antwoord. I'm probably pronounced that group's name wrong, so forgive me if I've got it wrong. I mean, this is the first time I've never even heard of them before until they were cast in this film. And I will admit, I did think at first her performance was a little bit shaky, and her inexperience did show at moments, but as the film sort of went on, she did get a lot better, and I think the scenes between her and Chappie are some of the best scenes in the film, and she brought a lot of heart to her performance as well. And also, I think Neill Blomkamp does a really good job at directing the film. In a way, this film does play almost like a companion piece to District 9, because like District 9, it sort of opens up with sort of this sort of semi-doco feel with a bunch of talking heads talking about some of the events that are happening in the film, and then it goes straight into the story. And also, there's some really well-staged scenes. There's some interesting themes and ideas that Blomkamp does tackle in this film that I thought were quite good. And it didn't come across as heavy-handed as it did in ELYSIUM. And also, like, at the same time, like, the film is not the most original film ever made. Like, you can tell while watching this film that does borrow some elements of other films. There's a little bit of RoboCop in there, since it does deal with sort of police robots. There's a bit of Short Circuit in there as well. But I would also say that it also has a little bit of Pinocchio in there as well. I'm not sure if anyone else picked up on that while watching the film. I certainly did, so I'd be interested to see what other people think. Other people have sensed that while watching this film. And also the CGI, besides Chappie, the CGI for the sort of for the rest of the scenes is just great, really great CGI work, and the film just looks great. It is a much smaller film than ELYSIUM, and maybe even a bit smaller than District 9, but it just looks great, and it's compelling, and it's engaging. And that's only for the first 2/3, but unfortunately, this film does suffer from, like I said earlier, it does suffer from the same flaws that ELYSIUM did, because I honestly thought, like ELYSIUM, it just starts to go downhill in the third act. And I could explain why that is, but that would go in the spoiler territory. Like, there were things that sort of happened in the third act that just didn't make sense to me, and it just came across as kind of way too ridiculous and really silly and a bit dumb. And it also sort of started and the film's where the film goes with its plot, there's a lot more holes that get bigger and bigger within the story, and there are just some aspects that happen just don't make any sense. And, like, I know, and it just stretches credibility. Yes, it is a movie about a robot that learns how to think and feel for itself, but at the same time, there are just things in that third act that just don't work, and it just feels very forced, doesn't make any sense, and it just, like I said, it just comes across as just ridiculous. And to be honest though, it almost ruins the film for me, and I actually really didn't like it at all. And which is a shame, because I really liked the first 2/3 of the film. I thought the first 2/3 were really great. It's just let down by a really kind of almost crappy third act. And and there's other things that don't quite work as the film. I think Sigourney Weaver, even though she's fine in the film, I thought she was severely underused. And also Ninja, who's the other member of Diantwork. I don't know whether it was his performance or the character. There was just something about him that I didn't really like. And like I said, I don't know whether it's just because of how he approached the character or if it was his performance. But I just didn't like him. And I just did not sympathize with his character whatsoever. And also the big sort of action set piece in the film, while it didn't come across as messy as ELYSIUM's big final action set piece was, but for some reason it felt for me kind of out of tone with the rest of the film, even though it was building up to it. But I don't know, I just didn't think the final big action set piece in the film was done that well. And I'm not sure why that is. That's just how I felt like watching it. It just felt like, this film needed a big action set piece to end the film on. Almost like I guess it just wasn't needed. Like, I would have preferred if it was a more sort of, took a more character and story driven approach when it came to its ending, instead of just having this big climactic action sequence, which just, in my opinion, the film could have easily done without. And also, I hated the very final scene in this film as well. And I'm just like sitting there in the cinema watching this, and I'm hoping, please film, don't end this film on that note. And it does, and I'm just like, it just frustrating. And one more positive for the film before I wrap up. I thought Hans Zimmer did a really great job with the score in this film. It's definitely it just was spectacular. So it's another great score by Hans Zimmer. I just thought it was very memorable. So that's the so that's the end of my review for Chappie. And if I had to rate this film, I keep going back and forth with the rating. I really like the first 2/3 of this film, but it's just that final third that just kind of wrecks the movie for me a bit. So I can understand why the critics have been harsh on it, and wouldn't be surprised if it was mainly because of that final third. And it doesn't ruin the film for me, but I will admit it almost does. So overall, I'm going to give the film a 3 out of 5. But I do look forward to seeing it again very soon, just to see how I feel about it on the second watch. Maybe I'll enjoy the third act a bit more on the second watch, but at the moment, that whole final act just rubbed me the wrong way. So, that's my review of Chappie. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all later. See you, everyone. Bye.